given and denied. Locking up the sun. It's been the best part of a year since Imperial armies fought in Sermasuak. In the weeks following the winter solstice, 4 generals direct their forces to gather at Atalak in Sealtok. The Imperial Orcs of the Summer Storm, the Marcher Drakes, the Bloodcloaks, and the Green Shield of Wintermark. There's a kind of grim determination in the air as the armies come together, especially from the Winterfolk. Along with the armies themselves come nearly 14,000 warriors from warbands led by independent captains, the majority of them fighting alongside the Bloodcloaks. This season, the newest Wintermark army is entwined with the power of autumn magic, while the lion's share of the heroes fighting alongside the physics and healers are Winterfolk themselves. There are representatives of many other Imperial nations, especially Dawn, Navarre, and the Brast Coast. Bound by a common cause, the enchantment that infuses the army makes it easier for those soldiers to fight alongside the Winterfolk, and it makes it easier for them to adopt the customs they need to survive in the cold of Sermasuak. It becomes common to see a flash of bright tabard beneath a warm fur and leather coat, or the spark of a vibrant tanglemust peeking out from beneath a heavy Suak hat. There's another presence here that raises a few eyebrows, quite apart from the visitors from the distant south. Even those familiar with the recent treaty are a little taken aback when a scarred Thule warlock and her attendants appear in set-up camp just out of bow's reach of the walls of Atalak. There is no suggestion they fear attack. The placement of their tents simply seems to be a manifestation of the peculiar Thule politeness. She meets with the generals and captains in her blue and blue pavilion, and when the armies begin to move, she accompanies them in a leather and fur palanquin carried by 2 burly orcs in cobalt masks who seem unaffected by the winter chill. Before the Imperial armies leave Atalak, she conjures 3 Irigo lizard owls that spiral up into the cold grey skies and then arrow off to the northeast. The Empire's armies cross into East Flows. The Jotun defenders are ready for them, putting up a spirited defence of the halls they have conquered and the walled camps they have established across the tundra. As the Winterfolk armies sweep east before the lakes, the Drakes and the Summer Storm press south. There is a particularly fierce fighting on the shores of the lake around Rek, where the Jotun have forced Suak thralls to begin laying the foundations for another fortification. On the same day that armed camp falls, a Navarre messenger reaches the Summer Storm that the Jotun have made good on their promise and sealed the western end of Pakanan's Pass. Passage between Sermasuak and Skarsind is now closed. Suak scouts report that 2 armies responsible for the destruction, Torfir blood-drunk's armoured warriors of the Shield of the Mountain, and the Skulderborn led by the Queen of Kalasee's favoured champion, Jorgen Hjalsen, have come down out of the mountains and are cautiously making their way northeast. They are sticking to the shores of the lake, giving as wide a berth as possible to the foothills of the Silver Peaks. As well they might. As the 2 Imperial forces meet up, the Thule finally strike. As the sun rises, the waters of Big Sister and Little Brother sparkle and dance. Everyone can feel the magic taking hold as a wave of enchantment flows down from the mountains and spreads across the plains of Sermasuak faster than the wind. Everyone feels a burst of vitality as the rivers of life begin to flow. At the same time, a thunderous brazen horn rings out from the north, louder than thunder, clearly not the work of any mundane horn. And the Thule join the battle for Sermasuak, crashing down on the Skelderborn and the Shield of the Mountain from the north as the Imperials surge forward to attack them from the rear. Fighting is brutal. The Empire may be more interested in conquest than killing, but the Shield of the Mountain at least intend to make their enemies pay for every foot they are forced to retreat. The Thule move a little more cautiously, testing out not only the Jotun resolve but also the strength of their alliance with the Imperial forces beside which they fight. For 3 days there are running battles along the shores of the northernmost lake, as Torfir Blooddrunk and Jorgen Hjalsen try desperately to get their rendezvous with the main Jotun force. The retreat sees heavy engagement with the warbands led by independent Jotun champions, including the Igara, under the walrus banner of Isa Winterborn and the aggressive warriors of the Howling Bears. While the main armies keep to the flat lands south of the peaks, the champions are more manoeuvrable and able to flank Imperial and Thule forces. But they are matched by independent Imperial captains bound by common cause with the Bloodcloaks. At the end of the third day, along the northern borders of East Flows, where the lakes give way to endless tundra of Suak Fount, the Skelderborn and the Shield of the Mountain turn and plant their feet. Behind them rises a crimson wall of roaring Jotun voices raised in a hymn of battle. The rest of Ser Masuak's defenders have arrived. Battle of the Three Armies. The Jotun are in a difficult position. They cannot easily defend East Flows in the face of the Thule alliance with the Imperials, and they must know it. But their honour demands that they at least try to hold against the forces arrayed against them. The two sides are almost matched, but the presence of the Imperial captains massively shifts the odds in the favour of the Empire. The two largest armies on the Imperial side, the Summer Storm and the banner of the Rhymehound, form the solid core of the Imperial push, and they are met by equally massive force of the Fellhammers and the Skelderborn, the latter's ranks still swollen by the champions of the Western Orcs. As the two massive forces clash, the banner of the Rhymehound unleash a trio of war rhinos from within their ranks. These living siege engines crush everything in their path, guided by warlocks, empowered with echoing roars that bind their enemies in inescapable chains, leaving them unable to escape the thundering charge of the great furred beasts. The Thule army does not rely solely on the rhinos. Packs of lean, white-blue furred wolfhounds battle alongside the orc soldiers, their razor-sharp jaws rending arms and legs whenever they find a loose chink in the armour of their Jotun prey. The Western Orcs are outnumbered. The large numbers of independent captains fighting alongside the Bloodcloaks alone are by themselves essentially a match for any two of the Jotun armies. The Orcs are not suicidal. After it becomes clear they cannot hold East Flows, they slowly cede ground. They have rescued the forces of Jorgen Hjalsson and Torfir Blooddrunk and must be satisfied with that slightly hollow victory. The slow Imperial advance soon gathers momentum while the Jotun never break. They are forced to retreat again and again until they are finally driven away from the lakes and out onto the open plains. Neither the Empire nor the Thule rest on their laurels. They continue to harry the Jotun, pushing toward the grand glacier of Ika's Tears. No end, no beginning. The Empire's liberation of Suak Fount is slow but steady. The Chasm of Thunder drops behind, consolidating gains in East Flows, and then following the main advance out onto the tundra. Their grinding advance allows the Imperial soldiers and the other two Thule armies to focus on pushing the Jotun, rather than dealing with the scattered garrisons of enthralled settlements. As the campaign grinds on, it becomes clear some of the Jotun seem to be focusing their attention, in turn, on the Thule and on the Imperial Orcs. The Orcs of the Shield of the Mountain in particular seem to relish every opportunity to face their fellow Orcs in battle. The tenor of these encounters is subtly different. Against the Imperial Orcs, they seem to revel in the sheer physicality of battle, treating the Orcs of Skarsind almost like respected rivals rather than hated enemies. There is much mention of Sifjorn of the Bitterblade by those who fight the Summer Storm, and many of those who are with the Legion, when they first heard the voices of Jotun ancestor, report hearing her voice echoing triumphantly in their head, urging them to conquer their foes, and, if they cannot, to embrace a glorious death in battle. The Thule receive no such respect, however. In the clash, there are shouted accusations of dishonourable behaviour. The Shield of the Mountain see the Thule's decision to side with the Empire against the Jotun as a strategy driven by greed, a greed which they will neither forget nor forgive any time soon. For their part, the Thule seem untroubled by the anger of the Jotun. Another notable conflict quickly develops between those who fight beneath the walrus banner of Isa Winterborn, the human champion, and the heroes among the Winterfolk. She and her fellow Yagara seek every chance to face Winterfolk warriors away from the main clash of battle, warband to warband, and seem to take particular pride in beating the Suak. There are some signs that those under the walrus banner might be the descendants of Suak taken as thralls by the Jotun long ago, raised among the western orcs in Tromska and Skallen, and choosing to fight alongside them rather than live as hunters and fisherfolk. Isa herself is nearly caught by the Suak, but manages to escape. Even after this near brush with death, she seems almost foolhardy in her drive to challenge the people of Wintermark. Diamonds for Tears. As the campaign grinds on, it becomes clearer and clearer the Jotun cannot hold against the Imperials and their allies. A group of dour marcher beaters among the Drakes capture a Jotun messenger, who reveals that the expected support from the garrisons of Olgafsdottir Shall and the fastness of Calant, the fortifications in Tannic Parry and Stark, are long overdue. With their aid, the Jotun may have been able to hold their enemies in the southern part of the Fount. Without them. As the spring equinox approaches, the Jotun armies pull back to the foot of the great glacier and the pride of Icka's Tears. It seems that it is here they will make their stand. There are signs that the mine is operating again, the Jotun having cleared the destruction caused by the daring raid launched after the summer solstice 383 YE, and dealt with the disruption that Imperial heroes left in their wake. There are again signs that the Jotun are in the early stages of attempting to fortify the mine, land cleared and foundations in the process of being laid. But for the time being, there are only simple palisades supplemented by a small number of stone walls. Yet, with their backs metaphorically against the wall, the Jotun make another stand, and this time they are able to hold the Empire. They cannot reverse their gains, but they can prevent them from taking back the westernmost parts of the tundra and reclaiming the Mithril mine. Keen-eyed Kalavasi warriors report that the Jotun are moving the Mithril by well-guarded caravan into the Suak wastes, while their armies hold the mine itself. The two great armies regroup, seeing two armed camps pitched in the shadow of the vast glacier. Roughly 2,000 soldiers fighting to free Suak, both Imperial and Thule, are dead or lost or wounded badly enough they will never fight again. Estimates suggest around the same number of Jotun warriors are likewise casualties of the campaign into Suak. Without the enchantment laid over the territory by the Thule, the loss of life would have been significantly higher. The Empire has liberated East Flows, and the Jotun are hanging on to Suak Fount only by their fingertips, but hanging on they are. The relief of Suak has begun, but it is only the beginning. There is still a great deal more to be done. Game information. The Empire has liberated East Flows, and it is 4/5 of the way towards conquering Suak Fount. As always when fighting the Jotun, the Wintermark armies have fought in a way that encourages heroism rather than slaughter. Their ability to conquer territory was increased, and the casualties they inflicted were reduced, as were those of the military units fighting alongside them. Due to an administrative error, we left the presence of the two fortifications mentioned, Olgafsdottir Shall and the fortress of Calant, off the report that is used for Eyes of the Sun and Moon. As such, we decided not to include the strength of those two castles in the calculation to determine the outcome of the campaign. We've determined an in-character explanation in the form of powerful blizzards. Sometimes the Jotun players have a bad event and their winds of fortune cause them trouble for a change. Following the winter solstice, the Jotun completed their plan to collapse the western end of Pakanen's Pass. As such, it is no longer possible to move armies through the pass between Suak and Skarsind. We've updated the strategic consideration sections of these territories to reflect this. This also caused the destruction of the Clattering Gully and the Krampus Shall. What this will mean for the Krampus is unclear. The Wintermark egregores may have a better idea. Earthquake weather. Battle opportunity. In the last quiet days before the spring equinox, a small group of warlocks from the jaws of winter's lightning invite several of their Imperial peers to meet with them. Their leader, a female orc in red mage armour with a staff topped with a fist-sized crimson jewel, has a proposal for the Imperials. For the military council, really. A proposal that concerns the fastness of Calant and Olgafsdottir Shall. One of the reasons the campaign against the Jotun has been so successful has been that the Allied forces were able to avoid their fortifications. Some of the Suak hunters come from the western regions have already confirmed that Stark, Tanakipari, and the Suak wastes have been gripped in a terrible blizzard for several months, no doubt explaining the lack of support by the garrisons there. The blizzard is now over. Together, the two castles represent the strength at least comparable to another Jotun army in Sermasuak. The Thule believed that those fortifications could also serve as the perfect anchor points, from which the unpredictable Ice Dragon could provide her powerful boons to the Jotun. With the problem of these forts in mind, the Warlock reveals that the Empire is truly honoured. The destroyer, Tathanan the Gaia, has focused their attention on Sermasuak. They have proposed a scheme which might help deal with one or both of the fortifications if the Empire was interested. During the spring equinox, the warlocks of the Jaws of Winter's Lightning can channel the power of the 5 who are one using a suitable regio. All the Empire will need to do is provide an escort to such a regio, one aligned with the power of summer. Once in position, the 5 themselves would rouse the bones of the earth and inflict catastrophic damage on the fortification chosen by the military council. The Thule themselves do not care if it is the fastness of Kalant or Olgafsdottir's shell that is destroyed. In a calm voice, as if discussing the weather, the Crimson Warlock declares that with a single ritual the 5 will annihilate one of the fortifications completely, depending on which one would suit the Imperial plan in Sermasuak best. She seems particularly keen to make the Imperial magicians understand the implications of this. She barely bothers to conceal her subtext. That the Thule have sufficient ritual magic to annihilate an entire fortification, should they so wish. The clear implication is that what the Thule can wield against the Jotun. Either way, the Thule have even located a suitable regio at Puhatentori in the Suak Wastes. The only problem is that it is not going to be possible for the Thule warriors to get close enough in anything like sufficient force to provide their own escort, and that the Jotun are already using that regio. The Yagara under the walrus banner of Isa Winterborn are garrisoned near the regio and will no doubt provide fierce resistance to Imperial attempts to tamper with it. It also seems that it is one of the main sources being used by the Ice Dragon to provide support to the Jotun in Sermasuak. There are likely to be heralds of the Summer Realm there, and perhaps even some of the Summer-born orcs. Imperial forces will need to provide an escort to the location, defend it while the 5 who are one raise and direct their magic, and then make sure everyone gets off the battlefield safely. Or not, as the Imperial generals decide. The civil service have confirmed the presence of a major conjunction of the Sentinel Gate to the vicinity, and have communicated the location to General Tamore Galdramuthu. They have also provided an assurance that they will also inform the General if the military council have declined the opportunity so that the Thule can get their small force to safety should the Empire choose to go elsewhere.